Yesterday, during a closed-door session, the Supreme Court did not act on the Trump administration's request to intervene in the legal fight over the proposed ban on most transgender people serving in the U.S. military. So, the year-and-a-half-long court battle over the ban lifted during the Obama administration will continue in lower courts. Since President Trump attempted to reinstate the ban in 2017, thousands of transgender troops have served while unsure of their rights or the future of their military careers. The documentary TransMilitary, released on iTunes this week, shows what life is like for these soldiers. Megan Thompson recently sat down with a former soldier as well as the film's director.
When Layla Ireland was 17 years old, she joined the Army. She was assigned to be an interrogator and deployed twice to Iraq. Ireland eventually became a corporal, continuing a long tradition of military service in her family.
My father was in the military, my grandfather was in the military, my great-grandfather was in the military. And I wanted to be part of that legacy, part of that tradition. But I also understood that being a part of that tradition did not allow me to really be myself.
That's because Ireland is transgender. When she enlisted in 2003, there was a ban on transgender people serving. The U.S. military had long considered issues related to being transgender as disqualifying physical and mental conditions. So during her 12 years in the Army, Ireland often couldn't identify openly as a woman.
It was difficult having to live by the core values of the military, where one of the most important ones to me is integrity. And I violated that on a daily basis by not being true to who I am or not being able to share that.
Ireland's story unfolds in the documentary TransMilitary, which tells the stories of 4 transgender troops. One Rand Corporation study estimated American forces could include as many as 10,790 transgender people. A study by UCLA estimates there could be as many as 15,500. Gabriel Silverman co-directed the film. He says the project began as a short documentary for the New York Times, published in 2015.
There shouldn't be any problem for us to serve openly.
At the time, debate had begun about lifting the transgender ban. But Silverman says stories like Ireland's weren't well known. He points to a 2015 poll showing that only 16% of those surveyed reported working or even knowing a trans person.
So here we are having this incredibly important conversation around gender identity, but the vast majority of Americans hadn't met anybody. And we realized that, look, the ban was still in place. We have this incredible story. We have this incredible group of people that we get to follow. And let's see where this goes. And we did.
Over the next 3 years, Silverman and his team continued to follow Ireland and 3 other trans troops: Captain Jennifer Peace, First Lieutenant Elle Cook, and Logan Ireland, Layla's husband, and a staff sergeant in the Air Force who'd served in Afghanistan from 2014 to 15.
Every day in Kandahar, our job itself when we go outside the wire is inherently dangerous.
Besides showing what life is like for transgender troops, the film shows some of the service members lobbying high-level officials at the Pentagon to eliminate the transgender ban. But coming out as trans to leadership carried huge risks, including the possibility of getting kicked out. After one of Captain Jennifer Peace's first meetings, word got back to her command in Washington State that she was trans.
I was told that I was going to immediately go back to male regulations, have my hair cut within male regulations, that I was going to correct people to male pronouns.
Layla Ireland says being asked to speak out in the film put the service members at risk too.
My reaction was, you're crazy, like I can't do this, like I'm putting everything on the line. And understanding that if not us, who was going to do this for us?
The risks also presented challenges to the filmmakers.
How do you film this film without, outing people, essentially?
All of our service members for the documentary understood that this is either going to come out at a time when the ban's still in place and their careers are going to be in jeopardy anyways, or the ban's going to be lifted and we were able to release this without jeopardizing their careers. So I think that was the calculation that a lot of people ended up making. The pernicious aspect of this is that you can't go to a public affairs officer in the military and say, I want to follow this random senior airman in Afghanistan. Why? Oh, because he's transgender, because you're immediately raising the red flag. So fortunately, Logan had some friends in Afghanistan who had prosumer DSLR footage and some GoPros and was able to capture some of the footage that gives you a sense of his day-to-day routine.
As the film shows, a trans soldier's experience depends largely on who's in direct command. In Afghanistan, Logan Ireland had a dangerous job as the lead driver of a convoy. His commander accepted his identity, and Ireland says he fit right in with his male peers.
What I like about this deployment is I can be my authentic self.
Ireland even came out in 2015 to President Obama's Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, who visited Ireland's base in Afghanistan. The visit made headlines when Carter commented he'd be receptive to letting transgender people serve openly.
Literally at the last split second, I decided to introduce myself. Sir, I'm Senior Airman Logan Ireland. I am representing one of the 15,000 actively serving transgender members of the military. His eyes bugged out, and he is the sweetest guy. He's like, wow, this is incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your service and having the integrity to come up here and tell me that.
While Logan was able to be his true self in Afghanistan, back in the States, Layla Ireland wasn't so lucky. She was stationed at the Tripler Army Medical Center in Honolulu, where her leadership told her she had to cut her hair and tell people to address her as a man.
And tell them, no, I'm not a female, I'm a male. That was hard. It was really difficult.
Can you just talk about why it was that you kept serving in that environment?
Because I was able to really be and do something that was greater than just myself. You just develop this sense of pride that not a lot of people can understand.
Despite that pride and all it meant to her, and her desire to serve as long as she could, Ireland eventually decided she had no choice but to leave the Army.
So I felt that my leadership was basically building a case against me.
An on-the-job injury made her eligible for an honorable discharge, so she took it rather than risk a dishonorable discharge.
I wouldn't be able to get a job on the outside, and so I chose to stick with the honorable discharge.
Layla left Honolulu and moved to Oklahoma to be with her husband Logan, and is now an advocate for trans rights.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here.
In June 2016, 6 months after Layla left the Army, Secretary of Defense Carter made the announcement she and the other service members had been working so hard for.
I'm announcing today that we're ending the ban on transgender Americans in the United States military.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
It was a relief and terrifying at the same time. The terrifying part was that now how do we get this policy to have a smooth implementation amongst folks who don't necessarily believe that we should be in service or even be in society.
And how was that for you as a storyteller and a filmmaker?
We'd been filming with Logan, Layla, Elle, and Jen for several years at that point. And so to see this policy change for the better and to know what that means, I don't know, there was a calming effect. From a filmmaking perspective, you also said, we have an ending, or so we thought.
And that's because just over a year later, in July 2017, President Trump announced his intention to reinstate the ban in a series of tweets. So while the issue continues to make its way through the courts, trans military members like Logan Ireland are serving in a legal limbo.
What is the future going to hold for me in the military? This is what I want to do. This is what I'm focused on.
Layla Ireland says she hopes the film she chose to speak out in will help inform the debate and help the public understand everything that's at stake.
We are part of that 1% of the American population that raises our right hand and swears to the oath to protect and defend this great country. It shouldn't matter what our gender identity is. It really should matter on if we are capable and willing to do the job.